So I guess I'll sign off. You know what? I think they should make a sequel to this movie someday. That would be amazing. That would really be something else. Yeah, I want to know what happens to these guys. I mean, don't they eventually, I don't know, form some...
Help. Help.
Preferred customer, my ass!
Hello and welcome everyone to another Comic Movie Marks video. And
we had a great start to our Sunday morning with some BVS, Zack Snyder commentary.
It was a joy. It was full of hope. It was fun. What's all those other plug words from 2016 that they used against BVS?
I think you covered them.
As you heard on the intro there, the way Mr. Snyder ended that commentary was kind of funny. I would say that's on purpose. A lot of people are freaking out that Vero dropped the ball on that one, which they kind of did throughout this whole thing, but I'm pretty sure that was the good old hype machine himself, Mr. Snyder, just dropping the feed right there mid-sentence.
Yeah, at first when I was watching it live, I was thinking, what the fuck? What the hell just happened? And then I got on Twitter and noticed that everyone, especially the people who had screen capped it, theirs ended right at the exact same time. The only thing I can assume is he had some sort of countdown, maybe a timer. He's showing us some more storyboards, kind of buying a little bit of time, and then he goes into that part, and then boom, it cuts off. That's the only thing I can think of. He timed it perfectly, and stream is over. So well done, Mr. Snyder, keeping us thinking, wondering, and clamoring.
And also keeping your name trending, because for some reason, Zach was trending. A couple other trends, though, was BVS 4 years. And I think another one was release a Snyder Cut, which I'm kind of confused on that one because this had nothing to do with the Snyder Cut for the most part. But hey, whatever. As long as it's trending in some manner, I guess that's good.
So speaking of Twitter, if you, for some reason, missed this or you want to go back and maybe pull some information from this live stream, Stephen Colbert on Twitter had a really good transcript type thread going of pretty much the entire stream. He did a fantastic job. And then he also has a link to a YouTube page. Michael Alton on YouTube has the entire director's commentary right there for you. So if for some reason you missed it, definitely give it a look. It was a lot of fun.
The link for that will be in the description if you guys want to go check that out for the tweet thread and that video. Let's get into some of the fun, joyful words by Mr. Snyder throughout this. He kicks it off by looking at his iTunes account, looking for Batman vs. Superman, and happens to see the Rotten Tomatoes score.
Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. 28% fresh. That is just rude.
Which is kind of funny because I actually thought it was at 27%.
So went up. We won some people over.
Getting that well-deserved notoriety right there. 28.
That's the 1% we really care about. I thought he did a fantastic job, really just setting the tone right there of how this, but not the entire live stream was gonna go, but he had some little digs here and there. He had some one-liners, I guess you could say, throughout the entire live stream. He talks about Batman not actually killing some of these people. He got a lot of criticism for shooting up and crashing into some of the villains, and no, actually, it turns out they are fine. They walked away. They had no issues. They were not dead.
So that answers all your questions out there for you people that say Batman doesn't kill. Snyder answered your question. They came back to life off screen.
I'm sure these guys are fine. They're going to be 100% okay. They're not at all dead. Those guys in the car there, they're 100% fine. We should have done like an A-team shot of them like on the side of the road, like getting up, like, oh, that hurt, but they're fine. Just for the, for the PG-13 of it all.
So no more bitching. I don't want to see that anymore on Twitter.
He even talks about it briefly before the warehouse scene as well. And nope, they just decided not to film those scenes, but they walked away. They had some flame retardant suits they were wearing or something, whatever he said. So they were fine.
And it was the other guy's fault for pulling the pin on the grenade. Yeah. He shouldn't have pulled the pin on the grenade if he didn't want to die. I mean, clear logic here. Some of the funny comments that Snyder made during this was also about Ben Affleck coming down on the helicopter, and he jumped out of the helicopter, a very small jump, but he jumps out and apparently got in trouble with the safety guy because they wanted it to be completely land before he came out. But he's like, the world's getting destroyed. I need to go save Wayne Enterprises.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too, because Snyder talks about refilming certain scenes, and that was the first take that they did, and that's the one that they used. And he said that actually happens more often than not, where they may do additional takes and then they end up using the first take anyways.
Hey, apparently he's well known for the first take, which I thought was kind of interesting. And just him describing like breaking the cameras, how that Jeep was moving throughout Metropolis or Detroit, and how they missed the ramp that they were supposed to go down. Funny little things. Of course, what a director's commentary kind of does. He took it to a different level because it was a visual one. In this case, he had a lot of storyboards. Snyder is very well known for drawing the movie out first and then shooting it, pretty much scene by scene the way he drew it. And these books that he had, these giant encyclopedias of Snyder, how much would those go for if he made copies? If you made copies of those and publicized those books, I think you would sell gangbusters.
Just hook it to my veins!
Oh yeah, it reminds me of the Eminem book that I bought several years ago, where he had a lot of the rhymes and stuff photocopied basically into the book itself. I think he could definitely sell those and people would just eat them right up. I also thought it was kind of cool and funny that he said, oh, I only have 4 for this movie, so that's not very many. I'm like, what? You have 4 of these books and that's on the lower side?
And he could barely pick them up.
Yeah, these things were massive. And he also did talk about very early on, he storyboards from the script, and then you film the scene based on the storyboard. And he said very rarely, unless it has to do with dialogue, do you go back to the script. You go based on the storyboard. That's what he wants to see. That's how he wants the scene to turn out. So I thought that was pretty cool insight.
And the detail that he has in his storyboard, that he really wanted to show us that he drew the wheelchair rolling backwards from Wallace Keefe when he jumps on Superman's statue in Heroes Park. That's how much detail he goes into in the drawing to make sure the drawing emphasizes that the wheelchair will scoop back, about 3 feet.
Some of the Easter eggs and funny lines that Snyder said when Harry Lennox shows up on screen, he says, oh, there's Lennox pretending to be a human being. And he actually says that, I want to say, twice in this commentary. So that was pretty funny. Just, Easter eggs for us fans that we kind of already knew about, but he's doubling down and confirming. So something else that I thought was kind of cool that he mentions in this had been speculated several months ago, but he actually confirms that when Superman screams when he's getting stabbed, that's what actually wakes the mother boxes. And he even says the line from the trailer, no Kryptonians here. I thought that was super cool, and just kind of confirming there was more plans to this entire universe and 5-story arc that he was building.
That's another thing I want to kind of talk about. I think this is the first time that Snyder himself has actually confirmed there was a 5-movie arc planned. He might have mentioned it before, I'm not sure. I know Jay Oliva has confirmed it, and everybody else has gone with that because Jay Oliva knows what the hell he's talking about. But I feel like this might have been the first time I've ever heard Snyder actually say that there was a 5-film arc. Maybe he's answered it in a Vero question, because he kind of brings that also up with the Jimmy Olsen thing, with Jimmy Olsen getting popped in the head. The reason why this happens and it's so abrupt and everything is just the escalation of what the story is going to be, because it's going over 5 movies.
So one of the coolest parts of this commentary for me, and I haven't watched a ton of commentaries in my day, but I've watched a few of them, and most of them, from my recollection, have talked about the different scenes and where they're filming certain things and sets and maybe a funny story here or there that happened within that scene. What Snyder went into was a whole nother layer of psychology behind each of these characters. He knew to the T exactly how he wanted each of these characters to look, to feel, to walk, to talk. I thought that was an additional layer that we otherwise maybe wouldn't have gotten. And the biggest one to me, he talks about Superman having more of an internal fortress of solitude. That it's not these giant crystals and, actually a physical fortress of solitude. It's an internal one that he has dilemmas and discussions. And during the Ghost Dad scene, that was the big thing that he was talking about. And I felt that brought an additional layer and level to this movie.
Yeah, he really wanted to emphasize on Superman's morality throughout the movie and the struggles that he's having. It's not so clear and cut. And one of his favorite lines, which we kind of always taken as an Easter egg, he emphasized on a little bit more, which I've kind of thought about as well. But when Perry White makes the joke about it's not 1938 anymore, this was a point that Snyder wanted to make. The world is more complicated since Superman was created. And now there's this gray area that Superman is fighting with, that Clark Kent is fighting with. He's just a guy from Kansas. And I really like the fact that he emphasized on that. And that one little part, that 1938 part, as some of us might have just taken as a Easter egg, that was the year that the first Superman comic was produced. This is not the same Superman anymore. Life is gray.
One of the things that always pissed me off from the naysayers was how people would say, oh, he doesn't care about these characters, he hates Superman, yada, 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 all the nonsense that was thrown around. When you watch this commentary, you can actually see the care that he has for all of these characters, especially Superman. But he talks about the relationship between Clark and Lois and what that means to the film. Clark as a reporter, Perry White being the bridge between two areas of media. He talks about Bruce Wayne and being self-medicated on sex and alcohol. And then one of the coolest ones for me as well that we had recently talked about on our live stream was Lex Luthor. And a lot of the lines that came from Lex Luthor, some people might look at, oh, this film is trying to be too smart for itself and blah, blah, blah. No, Lex Luthor is too smart for everyone else. To paraphrase Lex Luthor's line, this film is too big for little minds. He talks about that the way that Lex Luthor talks and some of the things that he says is him flexing his brain power. And it's not his fault that you can't keep up with it. I thought that was really cool and really adds just an additional level to each of these characters. That shows that Zack Snyder cares about these characters all the way down to how they think and feel and what everything means to them.
That was written by this guy Chris Terrio. You know, he wrote the Batman versus Superman. He referenced things in that movie that are so intellectually probing. I don't know how many people watching that movie know his references, or even if they stayed in the final cut of the movie. But that script was one of the most dense scripts I've read intellectually, because this guy who wrote it is just he's a genius. And it was weird in that kind of a movie to have dialogue that is so sophisticated and referencing Greek literature and philosophy and the great moral struggles of the world, but in this kind of superhero movie.
And speaking of understanding characters, somebody that doesn't quite understand characters or apparently humor in any way is Screen Rant, which tends to be a little bit more favorable towards Snyder-related stuff with Stephen Colbert and Andrew Dice. But on this day, for some reason, they wanted to go the opposite route. We have one Screen Rant article written by Thomas Bacon, which we've talked about him before, how tasty his name sounds. Even Zack Snyder doesn't fully understand Batman v Superman's nightmare sequence. Batman v Superman director Zack Snyder has admitted even he doesn't fully understand what's going on in the confusing nightmare scene.
Isn't that cute? But it's wrong!
Another article by Screen Rant, all done today, the 29th. Killer Batman DCEU backlash mocked by Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder jokes that Ben Affleck's Batman doesn't kill anyone in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, mocking the backlash during his commentary.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
Well, we'll start with the Zack Snyder doesn't fully understand the Batman v Superman nightmare sequence. Are you fucking kidding me?
When I was watching the live stream, that actually did cross my mind. The way that he worded things together, it kind of seemed like, yeah, he was trying not to go into so much detail to go off on a huge tangent, but I absolutely do not think that he does not understand why the nightmare scene is in there. Number one, this movie was released 4 years ago. It was also in production long before that. So maybe he doesn't completely remember. But I also think that he just didn't want to go off on some tangent to try to explain this whole thing. He just knows, okay, well, it had to do with Darkseid's anti-life equation, along with Flash breaking into the Batcave through the Speed Force. There was a lot that was going on. I think he was just trying to get through the scene. I absolutely don't think he was just like, well, I don't know why this is in there to begin with. And I knew when I was watching this that that's how some people were going to take it.
I took it as him being completely coy.
Coy? I'm not being coy.
Is he being coy?
Yeah, coy.
You're being coy.
He knows exactly what it is. He even kind of stumbles into the answer purposefully after he says Ben Affleck fell asleep because the file is taking too long. I don't know, maybe. Or maybe it's Flash's introduction into the scene causes some kind of glitch or something like that. But it just blew me away that someone could actually watch that and be like, oh yeah, he doesn't actually know. Yeah, he knows. He's explained other things in detail before. It's a 5-film arc. He had all the story beats planned out. That's the whole point. This was set up. Why would he not know what he's doing in a setup moment? It's just so stupid. And it's actually funny. One of the only comments on this Screen Rant article by a guy named Matches Malone says, "My God, if you don't know when a director is playing coy, what are you doing writing articles? Like, seriously?" And we have seen Mr. Bacon here write positive articles before because I know we've talked about him. So I'm not quite sure what he's missing. I don't know if he just saw a moment where he could jump on something. Maybe he wanted to get hate on. Maybe he hates his life today. I don't know.
Clickbait.
Mr. Cooper Hood wanted to one-up Mr. Bacon by his article, Killer Batman DCU Backlash Mocked by Zack Snyder.
Remember, there are no stupid questions, just stupid people.
Somehow jokes need to be spelled out to you, even though this joke is pretty spelled out. Even if you look at the tweets that he has posted in his article, one by Amateur Watcher, quoting Zack Snyder's comment, "He shouldn't have pulled that grenade, that's his fault."
I actually think it's awesome that Snyder is throwing these little things out there to just kind of say, yeah, I recognize your criticism, but I also don't really care. In this article, he even says, it isn't surprising to see Snyder not back off how he views his version of Batman. And then he also talks about how there have been countless fans who have pointed out that Batman has killed on several occasions in the comics. Yeah, well, we shouldn't have to continue to defend this nonsense. Let him have his version and you can have yours.
It makes absolutely no sense why they chose this route. I thought there was plenty of juicy stuff from there to talk about. If you want articles, if you want clickbait, if you want those clicks, I will feel like you could pick a better article. I know some idiots are going to use this title as ammo and they're not going to actually read the article, because as soon as they read the article and see these 2 quote tweets that he's using, they're going to realize how much of a joke it is. The man can't even make a simple joke, and yet you keep saying he doesn't understand humor.
That does not make sense.
Irony, motherfuckers. Irony. Do you not understand what you're doing? Yes, Zack Snyder movies lack levity. No, you lack a fucking sense of humor.
You're welcome, Mr. Bacon and Mr. Cooper Hood, for clicking on your stupid articles to read them.
And we're not going to link them below. So, Mr. Bacon and Mr. Hood, Zack Snyder has words for you.
I'm like, that's cool, but you're living in a fucking dream world, okay?
So that's going to wrap up our episode, guys. This was fun. Be sure to check out the description, guys, for that commentary that was done by Michael Alton on his YouTube channel. So go over there, send him some love, give him some clicks, and watch it yourself. And also be sure to check out Stephen Colbert's transcript thread if you just kind of want to visually see it, if you're sitting on the shitter and you just want to kind of read a couple things.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I absolutely recommend checking it out whenever you can on your own time. Definitely follow that YouTube link.
In case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.